Abba Yahuwah, I just want to praise and thank you, my Father. Oh, my Father, you are so, so worthy to be praised. Who are we, mere men, to want to point our fingers up to the heavens and demand and command from a creator of the heavens and the earth? Who are we? Who are we to be able to think that we can change things in your word, which you have said you will not add and you will not take away? Yet man has been doing this for centuries. For thousands of years, man has been doing this. Because why? There is a deceiver. There is an enemy. There is an enemy that is in the camp, and the enemy that is controlling the whole world. And if we are not those who are truly bent over, those that are truly hearing your voice saying, this is the way, walk you in it, we will be deceived in these last days. Because if there's one thing that we have understood in reading through the book of Jeremiah, we have understood. How many times does Jeremiah speak about false prophets, false shepherds, false teachers? How many times? How many times? They're speaking, and what is the purpose and the plan? To bring the people of Yahuwah out of your perfect alignment, to bring the people of Yahuwah out of your perfect way of what you want them to walk, in order to be able to go in a way that is going to bring them into destruction. And it's like you showed me as I was reading my 2010 journal, that I had a dream, and in this dream you spoke to me and you said, what was Hasatan's plan from the beginning? And you said again, what was Hasatan's plan from the beginning, my child? And you said, to bring deception upon the people. He deceived Eve. And because he deceived Eve, she disobeyed. And because she disobeyed, she received the curse of having to go out of the garden. And in that dream you said to me, nothing has changed, my child. That is still the plan of the enemy, to deceive the people to believe a lie. And if they can believe the lie, they will be deceived and they will be in disobedience and they will not receive my blessing. And how many people right now are in that lie, my Father? Oh, wow, Father. How many people right now are listening to deceptive, demonic spirits that come to deceive people, to take them out of your perfect plan, your perfect alignment of that which you are wanting to do in this time. But Abba Father, I just want to thank you, because it's like this chapter 5 says, you will have a remnant that is made up of sovereigns and priests of Eloah. And so you're going to have a set-apart priesthood. You are going to have a set-apart priesthood that will reign upon the earth with Messiah Yahushua when he comes. And they are those that will bow their knee and follow the Lamb wherever he goes. And they are those that are totally and utterly submitted and surrendered to you. And so I ask you, Abba Yahuwah, to help your people in this hour, where truly they are being weighed in the scales. And that is very much the constellation that is in the heavens right now. The constellation of the scales. And your people are being weighed in scales right now. And which way are they going to turn? And so, Abba Yahuwah, I ask you, my Father, please will you have mercy? Please will you have mercy, Father? Please help us, my Father, to hear the sound of your voice, so that a voice of a stranger we will not follow. We want to truly be sheep that will hear your voice, so that a voice of a stranger we will not follow. We want to follow the shepherd, the one that has got the keys to the door. We cannot enter through the back way. We cannot enter through the back. We can only enter through the door, and you hold those keys. And we have to go through the front door of the sheepfold. But there's so many deceptive voices out there, Father. And I just pray, silence those false prophetic voices. It's the cry of my heart, Father. I keep crying out to you to please silence those voices, like Elijah silenced those false prophets. He silenced them. Silence them, Father, so that they will stop leading your people astray. But your people have decisions to make. And that is what you had still spoke when you said, I draw a line in the sand. A little leaven is going to leaven the whole lump. And so at the end of the day, people have decisions to make. What camp do they want to be in? Who are they listening to? Who are they following? Because your sheep hear your voice. You are not confused. You will expose every lie for what it is, and you will reveal truth for what it is, Abba Yahuwah, because this is what is being done. You are the one that is worthy to open the scroll. And when we are in perfect alignment with you, not with religion, not with religious things, not with Judaism, not with Christianity, but in perfect alignment with you and your ways, then we will hear your voice, and we will not be swayed by doctrines of demons. Because Judaism will only lead us astray, and Christianity is again another religion that will lead us astray. But we want to be a remnant bride, a set-apart priesthood that wants to follow the Lamb wherever he goes. And so I thank you, Abba Yahuwah, that today you open up this word to us. Open up your heart. And may you come and reveal your purposes and plans to us in this day. In Yahushua's name, Amen. Amen. And so we are going to once again pick up where we finished off last week. Such exciting things that the Father revealed as we read in Revelation chapter 5 from verses 5. And when we read that the one of the elders said to me, "Do not weep. See, the Lion of the tribe of Yahudah, the root of David, overcame to open the scroll and to loosen its 7 seals." And so we must understand this is what the Father is wanting to be able to reveal to us, that who is our Messiah? Who is this Lamb and this Lion? when we put him in his rightful place, when we understand the Lamb that was slain, the Lamb that has come and offered all the sacrifices that is spoken of in Leviticus, all those sacrifices that we want to go into, every little sacrifice, we must understand all those sacrifices was fulfilled by our Messiah. And interesting, all those sacrifices can only be offered with a fire. There's no offering to the Father. There's no sacrifice to the Father. There's no worship to the Father that doesn't come by fire. But we do not want fire in our lives. All the sacrifices that was offered on the altar had to be burnt up with a fire. And even on the altar of incense, incense could not be given to the Father if it wasn't with a coal that came from that brazen altar on the outside that was making the fire. So at the end of the day, if we do not have Abba Yahuwah's fire that comes in our lives, that's why the sacrifice by Elijah had to be burnt up with the fire. Because at the end of the day, we need to become that living sacrifice for you. And for us to become that living sacrifice for you, Abba Yahuwah, that's no way without fire. So you will bring many things into our lives. And so Yahushua had to become all of this for us. And he became the inscriber, the lawgiver. He became everything. He became the Torah of the Spirit. He was the Torah that was made flesh, that we read everything in Hebrews chapter 7, a difficult scripture that many people do not want to go there. And I myself was one of those that thought there's certain scriptures that I don't want to go there because I don't really understand them. But Hebrews chapter 7 opened up beautifully to us when we understand that he became the law cut out in the flesh, the enactment of the law in the flesh. And that's what we had to understand. And this is what we saw last week. So now we pick up in verse 6. And it says, and I looked, and I saw in the midst of the throne, and of the 4 living creatures, in the midst of the elders, a lamb standing, as having been slain, having 7 horns and 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of Yahuwah, sent out into all the earth. Interesting. What is on the altar? What is on the altar? What was on the altar of sacrifice outside? Horns. What is on the altar of incense? Horns. And what was having to be put there? The blood was sprinkled on those horns. And now we see 7 horns. Yahushua is the one who is standing. He is the lamb standing as having been slain, having 7 horns, not 4, because both the altars have 4. Yahushua is the perfect lamb. Abba Yahuwah's perfect number 7. Divine perfection. 7 horns, 7 eyes. Because at the end of the day, we need to see. You see, the horns is where he was, the priest would come and be able to touch those horns and be able to sprinkle on the horns the blood, the same as he had to be able to sprinkle the blood when he brought it into the Holy of Holies onto the tabernacle, onto the Ark of the Covenant. And so Yahushua has fulfilled all of those sacrifices, everything. He fulfilled in its entirety. And that's why I say, when we understand the tabernacle, we understand that it is an absolute portraying of Yahushua in his fullness. And he says, which are the 7 spirits? So the 7 eyes which are the 7 spirits of Yahuwah, sent out into all the earth. So understand, what is this? Yahuwah's got seven eyes, 7 spirits being sent out upon the earth. That's why he says in Ezekiel 22 verse 30, I seeked for a man to stand the gap before a nation, and I found nobody. So what is seeking? It's these eyes, these 7 spirits of Yahuwah. So let's go look at Isaiah chapter 11. So we can start in Isaiah chapter 11 to understand the 7 spirits, because it's speaking about 7 spirits. So let's go look at the 7 spirits. And in Isaiah chapter 11, and we are going to read from Isaiah chapter 11, we're going to read a few scriptures here. And a rod shall come forth from the stump of Yeshai. So, what is that rod? That rod is a shoot. That rod is a branch. And we already saw last week that he's the shoot, he's the branch, he's the one who's going to come forth. He's the shoot, he's the branch. Shall come forth from the stump of Yeshai, and a sprout from the roots shall be fruitful. So who is the one that will come forth from the stump of Yeshai? Yeshai is the one from David's father. So from the line of David, he's the one that is having to come forth. He's going to come forth, because that is what we read, and that is what we saw in Revelation chapter 5, that it says that he is the Lion of the tribe of Yahudah, the root of David. And so we must understand that this is the very one that is going to be able to come forth. He's the one that is going to be able to come forth. So yeah, from this, it's telling us a root, and a rod a shoot, a branch shall come forth from the stump of Yeshai. A sprout from the roots shall be fruitful. So from there, he's going to have other roots, other fruits. He's the root, and then from there, there's going to be many other branches that are going to come forth from him. And the Spirit of Yahuwah shall rest upon him, the Spirit of wisdom, understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of knowledge, and the fear of Yahuwah, the 7 spirits of Yahuwah. So who is this? Shall rest on him. So who is it going to rest on? The shoot, the branch. This one that is being raised up, that is spoken here, the Lion of the tribe of Yahudah, from the root of David. And shall make him breathe in the fear of Yahuwah. Wow. So you see, Yahushua himself walked in the fear of Yahuwah. So if he walked in the fear of Yahuwah as a young man, then so are we. He shall not judge by the sight of his eyes, nor decide by the hearing of his ears. So you see, he's not going to judge by the sight of his eyes. That's why he's got 7 eyes. And that is why we need to see. We need to have spiritual eyes to see the deeper things that the Father has for us to see the deeper understanding of the things that the Father has for us to understand. You see, there are prophets, different prophets. There are prophets that see a lot more in the Spirit, and then there are prophets that hear in the Spirit. But it's a combination of both, because even if you see in the Scripture, you need to hear in order for you to be able to discern that which the Father is revealing. So, sight of his eyes, nor decide by the hearing of his ears. Why? Because he walks in perfect alignment of the Father. So he doesn't judge by what he sees or by what he hears, but he looks, this is why I always say, Father looks at the finished product. So, you know, when Father looks at you, and this is for me, I don't know if it's for you, but it's for me, because so many times I am bent over before the Father and I'm weeping before him, because all I see is my flaws. I see where I make mistakes, how many times I go into my flesh, and I know that I have a way to go for me to finally get there. And what always comforts me is the fact that Abba solidifies in my heart, my child, I look at the finished product. I don't look at where you are right now. I understand that you are a work in progress. So don't be so hard on yourself. Understand, Father sees the work in progress that you are. Father sees that you're going through the fire. Father sees that you are being purified. Father sees the willingness of your heart. As long as you're constantly willing to humble yourself before Him, as long as you constantly come and humble before Him and say, oh Father, remove this wicked thing from me, my Father. I don't want this in my life right now. Father sees. And Father knows He's working in you, both to will and to do His good pleasure in you. But we are the ones that allow the devil to speak in our ear and say, oh, look at you. And then if the devil doesn't speak in your ear, then the devil will maybe raise up somebody that speaks by the flesh to be able to point out things that are there within you that is not always right. Not that you don't know that it's there, because you do. But praise the Father, Yahushua doesn't see that. He doesn't judge by sight of his eyes, nor decide by the hearing of his ears, but with righteousness He shall judge the poor, and shall decide with straightness for the meek ones of the earth, and shall strike the earth with the rod of His mouth, and slay the wrong with the breath of His lips. So understand, He's looking to see, are you walking? Are you striving to walk in righteousness? Are you striving to walk in straightness? He sees your heart. He sees, what are you willing to do? Or are you just willing to be able to take whatever it is that comes your way? He says, He shall judge the poor, and shall decide with straightness for the meek ones of the earth, and shall strike the earth with the rod of His mouth, and slay the wrong with the breath of His lips. So you see, those who are in constant rebellion to the Father, those that say they take His name upon their lips, but their lives and their hearts are far from Him. They only seek Him for what He can give them. They don't really seek Him because they want to obey Him. They seek Him because they want Him to serve them. And righteousness shall be the girdle of His loins, and trustworthiness the girdle of His waist. So you see, Yahushua Himself is girdled with righteousness. So if we put on Messiah, how can we put on Messiah and not walk out righteousness? And what is righteousness? Righteousness is everything about keeping His statutes, His ordinances, His laws. Because that is the foundation that He has within His life. And He says, and His loins, and trustworthiness, the girdle of His waist. So guess what? Even when you are faithless, and even when you are trustless, I don't know if there's such a word. I don't think so. But He is trustworthy. So even when you are not trustworthy, He is trustworthy. And a wolf shall dwell with the lamb, and the leopard lie down with the young goat, and the calf and the young lion and the fatling together, and little child leads them. And a cow and a bear shall feed their young ones, lie down together, and a lion eat straw like an ox. And the nursing child shall play by the cobra's hole, and a weaned child shall put his hand in the adder's den. So you see, there's no fear of a snake. And amazing, Shaul, when the viper came to be able to bite him, he shook his hand, shook it off, and they were expecting him to die immediately. And no poison was able to come against him. That's the kind of faith we've got to walk in. That's the kind of faithfulness that Abba is to us, if we are to Him, that we should walk in. They do no evil nor destroy in my set-apart mountain, for the earth shall be filled with knowledge of Yahuwah as the waters cover the sea. So you see, the earth shall be filled with the knowledge of Yahuwah as the waters cover the sea. And in that day there shall be a root of Yeshai. Here we go again. There was a rod shall come forth from the stump of Yeshai. A rod, the shoot, the branch. Now it talks about there will be a root of Yeshai, standing as a banner to the people. Unto him the nations shall seek, his rest shall be esteemed. Isn't that amazing? The nations shall come and seek Yahushua. The nations shall bow down to Yahushua. He's the one, he's the standing banner. And it shall be in that day that Yahuwah sets his hand against a second time to recover the remnant of his people, who is left from Ashushur, from Mitzrayim, from Pathros, from Cush, from Eliam, from Shinar, from Hamath, and from the islands of the sea. And he shall raise a banner for the nations and gather the outcasts of Israel. So you see, we are just reading about this in Jeremiah, and we're going to see in Jeremiah chapter 31, this is exactly what it is. He's going to raise up the house of Yahudah. He's going to raise up the house of Israel. It's He's doing. Yahushua is the one who is gathering them. This is what it's about. Not what man is doing. Not when there's going to be a tribe Ephraim and then a tribe this and a tribe that. No. Abba Yahuwah is gathering his people, and he knows those who are his from those who are not. And assemble the dispersed of Yahudah from the four corners of the earth. And the envy of Ephraim shall turn aside, and the adversaries of Yahudah be cut off. Ephraim shall not envy Yahudah, and Yahudah not trouble Ephraim. You see, because this is what is going on right now. Yahudah does not want to accept the lost tribes of the house of Israel, and they do not accept Ephraim right now. You are not able to come into that land, provided unless you convert to Judaism, you are not being able to be an Ephraimite in that land, because you have to be a Yehudim. And so therefore Ephraim has no place in the land of Israel right now. So that is not the fulfillment of what Abba is doing yet, because Ephraim is not come in. And this is exactly what he's saying, that then they shall not be able to sit and envy one another, and you, Yahudah, not trouble Ephraim, because up until now, Yahudah has done nothing but trouble Ephraim. Why? Because everyone that comes, that is, if they come like myself, who try to come back into my land, but because I couldn't prove with paperwork to say that, my ancestors come from the Spanish Inquisition, from the Portuguese Inquisition. So now all the paperwork that goes back to them to prove that I am from the tribe of Yahudah. How the heck am I going to be able to do that now? Because now I need to go back in documents, and I did go back on my genealogy and finally did find out where my genealogy came from, Catalonia, from Spain. I did. But you see, they trouble Ephraim because they don't want us there. Because why? Because they know that we carry within us Messiah Yahushua. And this is why they don't want us there. And so look at verse 16. And there shall be a highway for the remnant of his people, those left from Ashushur, as it was for Israel in the day when he came up from the land of Mitzrayim. So I am reading you a lot of scriptures, because in this whole teaching of chapter 5, we are going to understand that he's going to raise up a priesthood. So this is Messiah Yahushua, who is the priest, who is the high priest, who is the priest in the order of Melchizedek, who is the one that is now going to raise up his house. And he's the one who sees, he's the one who has eyes to see, he's the one who's going to judge righteously. He's the one who's got a girdle of trustworthiness around his waist. And he's the one who is going to raise up a banner for the nations. And he's going to gather the outcasts. Isn't that amazing? He's the one gathering the outcasts. So let's go have a look now at Revelation chapter 22 verses 16. In Revelation chapter 22 verses 16 it says, so we can just look at this whole root of David, and it says in Revelation 22:16 says, I, Yahushua, have sent my messenger to witness to you these matters in the assemblies I am the root and the offspring of David, the bright and morning star. There you go. No need to be confused. He sent his messenger, Yochanan, and to Yochanan he is saying, I sent my messenger to witness to you these matters in the assemblies. So today in the assemblies, all throughout the nations of the world, Yahushua is using his messengers in order to be able to come and to speak and say that he is the root and the offspring of David, the bright and morning star. That is who Yahushua is. And so now we look at Isaiah chapter 53 for us to understand what is everything that our Messiah has done for us, because we need to understand he is the one who was slain. He's the one who is the root. So verses 6 says again, just stay there in Isaiah 53. I'm just reading to you again. And I looked and I saw in the midst of the throne the 4 living creatures, in the midst of the elders a lamb. So we discussed the 4 living creatures. Remember, we discussed Yahushua stands in the fullness of the 4 living creatures. We discussed that in chapter 4 as having been slain, having 7 horns and 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of Yahuwah. And he came and took the scroll out of the right hand of him sitting on the throne. Okay, so now we are going to be able to see this Isaiah 53, to see who is the one that was slain. So Isaiah 53 says from verse 2, for he grew up before him as a tender plant, as a root out of the dry ground. You see, everything about Revelation chapter 5 is everything revealing who is this root of Yeshai, who is this root of David, who is this Lion of Judah, who is the Lamb. So that is why we cannot look at this without looking at Isaiah 53. And it says, for he grew up before him as a tender plant and as a root out of the dry ground. He has no form or splendor that we should look upon him, no appearance that we should desire him. Despised and rejected by men. So guess what? If we are going to be despised and rejected by men, so as he says, no servant is greater than his master. So a time is going to come that even when we speak, people are going to want to stand up against us. Why? Because they don't accept what we say. But why? Because at the end of the day, neither they accept, neither did the religious leaders accept what Yahushua said. And what did they do? They stood up against him. They came up against him. And this is exactly what will happen in the day and the age that we're living in. The religious leaders will stand up against us. So he says, despised and rejected by men, a man of pains and knowing sickness. My goodness, where did he know sickness? He knew sickness. And as one from whom the face is hidden, being despised, and we did not consider him. Truly, he has borne our sicknesses and carried our pains. So, if we get sick and if we have pain, understand, our Messiah had it too. He had it too, and he has borne our sicknesses and carried our pains. Yet we reckoned him smitten, stricken by Yahuwah and afflicted. He was stricken, he was afflicted by Yahuwah, so that he may be able to have borne everything. So that when we go through these things, when we suffer for Messiah Yahushua, we are to understand, so did he suffer for us. And so will we suffer for him. But he was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our crookednesses. The chastisement for our peace was upon him, and by his stripes we are healed. And so we must understand, he's come to bring complete deliverance. He's come. We make too lightly of this. By the stripes we are healed. And then we can't understand why people die in their sickness and they're not healed. We must understand, he's saying, he has borne our transgressions, our transgressing of Torah. That's the sins. And he was chastised for our peace. Our peace was upon him. However, we must understand, what did he say? No servant is greater than his master. If he's going to have to be scourged, and he's going to be reviled, and he's going to be rejected by man, then what makes us think we're not? That's what he said to his disciples. If they reject me, they will reject you. If they love me, they will love you. If they accept my message, I'll accept your message. We all like sheep went astray. Each one of us has turned his own way. That's exactly where we are today. We all like sheep went astray. Each one of us has turned to his own way. Each man does what they think is right in their own eyes. That's the time that we're living in right now. And Yahuwah has laid on him the crookedness of us all. He was opposed and he was afflicted, but he did not open his mouth. Wow. I tell you, did that speak to me volumes this morning? That spoke to me volumes this morning. My child, when you are going to be spoken bad of, and when people are going to stand up against you, can you just keep your mouth? Be still. Say nothing. Let them say whatever they want to you. What difference does it make? As long as you stand before me with a pure heart and clean hands, then what does it matter what man says about you? This morning spoke to me, because he says he was oppressed, he was afflicted, but he did not open his mouth. He was led as a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before its shearers is silent, but he did not open his mouth. And that was the word that the Father still gave me when we came to the airport, and when these people are going to treat us like, not very well at all. When we are arriving at a time when they've just gone into level 5 lockdown, and now we're wanting to come into the land, and they are screaming at us and saying, what do you think you're doing over here? And the Father said, open not your mouth. Take whatever it is that they lash out at you. You will be like a lamb led to the slaughter. And those were the words that he said to me. And he was taken from prison and from judgment. And as for his generation, who considered that he shall be cut off from the land of the living for the transgression of my people, he was stricken. So you see, he was stricken because of our transgression. Transgression of what? Transgression from coming away from the truth of the Father's ways. And now we want him to just be, he's my righteousness, but I don't need to do anything. I accept Yeshua, I put on Yahushua, and I don't need to worry about doing anything. So I can walk like the devil, behave like the devil, act like the devil, speak like the devil, carry on like the devil, but I have the righteousness of Messiah within my life. I don't need to keep anything, I don't need to do anything, I just need to put on Messiah. But what are we doing? We don't understand. We don't understand. Messiah has come to lead the way. He came to lay down everything, so that now, by writing, by giving us the Ruach of Yahuwah, we walk it out. And he was appointed a burial site with the wrong and with the rich at his death, because he had done no violence, nor was deceit in his mouth. Wow. There was no deceit in his mouth. He didn't speak up anything. He allowed them to do what they had to do to him, because he knew whose he was. He knew who was the one that was allowing him to go through all of this. He knew. And you see, when we know that we know whose we are, and when we know that we know the call on our life, what people say and what people do should not be important. And this is the place that the Father is trying to make me understand, to say, child, don't worry. Stay faithful to me, because that's all I ask you to do. And this is where we've all got to get to. But Yahuwah was pleased to crush him. He laid sickness on him. He keeps saying he laid sickness on him. And I thought to myself, I've never read that Yahushua was sick. He laid sickness on him. That when he made himself an offering for guilt, he would see a seed. He would prolong his days, and the pleasure of Yahuwah prosper in his hand. So do you see, sometimes we might have sicknesses in our body and we die in that sickness and we do not understand. We pray for healing and we pray for healing and the person doesn't get healed. But Yahushua himself had sickness put on him. But Yahuwah chose to put sickness on him. He chose to crush him. He laid sickness on him. That when he made himself an offering for guilt, he made himself this offering for guilt. He would see a seed. He would prolong his days. The pleasure of Yahuwah prosper in his hands. He would see the result of the suffering of his life and be satisfied. Wow! Can you imagine? He would see the result of the suffering of his life and be satisfied. So when we suffer for Messiah, why are we not satisfied in that? Because we're going to read what it is that he requires for us. If we are called to suffer, we are called to suffer as he suffered, because it is spoken of. Yeah, let's see if I can find it where it says over here. Here. It says in 2 Peter chapter 2, we're going to read it later. It says, who being reviled did not revile, in return suffering did not threaten, but committed himself to him who judges righteously, who himself bore our sins in his body on a timber, so that we, having died to sin, might live unto righteousness. So he went through all of this. So this is the confirmation of what was there. But we ourselves, so it says, look what he says over here. Verse 20, 1 Peter chapter 2 verse 20. For what credit is there in enduring a beating when you sin? But if you suffer for doing good and you endure, this finds favor with the Lord. Wow. Wow. So when we have to suffer for Yahushua, then that means that it finds favor in the eyes of Yahuwah. But then what do? It turns out and he says, so in Isaiah 53 it says, he would see the result of the sufferings of his life and be satisfied. Are we satisfied with the sufferings that we've been through? No, we don't even want to suffer anything. But listen to what it says in 1 Peter chapter 4 verses 12. Beloved ones, do not be surprised at the fiery trials that is coming upon you to try you as though some unusual matter has befallen you. But as you share Messiah's sufferings, as we share Messiah's sufferings, rejoice, in order that you might rejoice exultingly at the revelation of his esteem. So you see, we are to rejoice because why? We are going to rejoice exultingly at the revelation of his esteem. If you are reproached for the name of Messiah, you are blessed, because the spirit of esteem, the spirit of glory and of allure rests upon you. On your part he is blasphemed, but on your part he is praised. For do not let any of you suffer as a murderer or a thief or a doer of evil or as a meddler. But if one suffers being messianic, let him not be ashamed, but let him esteem allure in this matter. Because it is time for judgment to begin from the house of allure, and if firstly from us, what is the end for those who do not obey the good news of allure? Verse 19 says, if a righteous one is scarcely saved, where shall the wicked and the sinner appear? So the righteous one is scarcely saved. Wow, the righteous one, the one who's walking righteous before the Father in his set-apart ways, is scarcely saved. Then where shall the wicked and the sinner appear? So then those who suffer according to the desire of allure, okay, So now look and see. We're going to tie this up with Isaiah 52. The Father has really got us on another mission over here. So listen to what he says. But Yahuwah was pleased to crush him. He laid sickness on him that he made himself an offering for guilt. He would see a sword. He would prolong the days, and the pleasure of Yahuwah prosper in his hand. Isaiah 53 verses 10. It says, and he would see the result of the suffering of his life and be satisfied. Through his knowledge, my righteous servant makes many righteous, and he bears their crookedness. So you see, through everything that he's been through, he makes many righteous, and he bears their crookednesses. So that even now when we stumble and we fall, because he's the one who works it in us, both to will and to do his good pleasure, we get up. So now look at what he says in 1 Peter chapter 4, verses 19. So then those who suffer according to the desire of Yahuwah should commit their lives to a trustworthy Creator in doing good. So if the Father chooses that you to go through a suffering, and you're going through a hardship, and you're going through a difficulty, and right now it's not pleasant on your flesh, and right now you are squirming, you are wanting to be like the Israelites in the desert, whom the Father also decided to put them through a lot of suffering, an 11-day journey. Couldn't he have just spared them and just let them go through? And yet he understood that they were all these things. Why didn't he just allow them? No, because why? At the end of the day, we must understand that the Father was going to be able to do this because why? He wanted to put them through that. They were going to suffer for his name's sake. So those who suffer according to the desire of Yahuwah should commit their lives to a trustworthy Creator in doing good. So we are not to murmur. We are not to complain. And so when the hardships come our way, we are to rejoice because we are reading everything in Isaiah 53 of what our Messiah had to go through. And I want you to remember that he turned around and what did he say to his disciples? This is the prophetic word all spoken about him. And you see, we always want to just, focus on everything that Yahushua has done that we don't have to do. But at the end of the day, we must understand that there are things that we are going to have to go through for us to be able to birth the things that has got to be birthed upon the earth. And if it's going to take the Father taking us through suffering, taking us through things, we are to be able to bear it with good spirits, rejoicing in it. So listen to what he says in John chapter 13, verses 15, and he says, for I give you an example that you should do as I have done to you. Truly, truly, I say to you, a servant is not greater than his master, nor is an emissary greater than he who sent me. If you know these teachings, blessed are you if you do them. I do not speak concerning all of you. So he says, we must understand, this is exactly what he's saying, where he says, no servant is greater than his master. So whatever Yahushua had to go through, we must not be surprised if we ourselves are going to have to go through things. What hardships did the disciples go through? What hardships did Shaul go through? Paul, what hardships did he go through? He was shipwrecked how many times? He talks about how he was whipped and how he was beaten and misunderstood and how many things did he go through? But yet when we are just go through the slightest thing, we already don't want that to happen. So we finish off Isaiah 53 and it says, therefore I give him a portion among the great, and he divides the spoil with the strong, because he poured out his being unto death, and he was counted with the transgressors, and he bore the sin of many and made intercession for the transgressors. So praise the Father. He's seated at the right hand of the Father, making intercession for our transgressions, so that we may return back to the Father. I just felt today that I wanted to really work through Isaiah 53, because we all know Isaiah 53, but we need to see our Messiah in the fullness of that which Messiah has done, to make us understand that many times we just have this mindset of the church mindset, and we need to start walking in the fullness of the understanding of the revelation. And the understanding of the revelation is that it's not just a case of to say, well, I'm going to go through nothing because now I'm a believer. It's to understand that we too are going to must probably have to go through a few things in the times ahead of us. But we overcome in Him, praise Abba Yahuwah. So, let us now go read Zechariah chapter 3 from verses 8. Zechariah chapter 3 verses 8 and 9 says, "And now listen, Yahushua the high priest, you and your companions who sit before you, for they are men of symbol. For look, I am bringing from my servant the branch. I am bringing from my servant the branch." Who is my servant the branch? None other than Yahushua himself. "See the stone which I put before Yahushua. On one stone are 7 eyes." See? What is that? Who is that? "See, I'm engraving its inscription, declares Yahuwah of hosts, and I shall remove the guilt of that land in one day." Because who is worthy to open the scroll? Who is the one that's going to gather his remnant bride, his remnant priests, his royal priesthood from the 4 corners of the earth? Who is going to do that? He's going to do that. So you see, I am engraving its inscription. He says, "See the stone which I have put before Yahushua." This is all about Yahushua the high priest. Remember, the Yahushua the high priest was standing before the enemy with dirty garments. This is Yahushua, the one who was scourged. Interesting how this happens to be, his name happens to be Yahushua. Let us not be confused in what our Messiah's name is. This man, Yahushua the high priest, is standing in the gap as being Yahushua himself. And Hasatan is now accusing him as he was hanging at the stake and saying, well, look and see, look. Now he's dead. But what does the Father say? Yahuwah rebuke you, Hasatan. Yahuwah rebuke you. Remove the filthy garments from him. And to him he said, "See, I will remove your guilt from you and shall put costly robes on you." So you see, all of that which Messiah had to go through, he paid for it all at the stake so that we can walk in the fullness of everything that he's already done for us. And so he says, let him put a clean turban on his head. They put a clean turban on his head and they put garments on him, and the messenger of Yahuwah stood by. So you see, everything of what we've got to do, we've got to put on Messiah, because everything of what we did, this was the prophetic work that the Father had us do. Because why? We've got to come and walk in the fullness of Messiah Yahushua. So then he turns around and he says so you see, now he talks about, see the stone which I have put before Yahushua. So what is the stone? And one stone, and on one stone are 7 eyes. So who's that? He's just spoken about the 7 eyes in Revelation chapter 5 verses 6. So we see. Then we look at chapter 4 verse 10, and it says, "For who has described the day of small beginnings? They shall rejoice when they see the plumb line in the hand of Zerubbabel. These 7 are the eyes of Yahuwah, which diligently search throughout all the earth." So you see, those are the 7 eyes of Yahuwah, 7 spirits of Yahuwah that are searching throughout all the earth. Who did he give us? He gave us the Ruach of Yahuwah. the 7 eyes of Messiah Yahushua himself. So now let's go back to Revelation so we can continue. Let's just see how our time is doing. We're definitely not going to finish this today. And yeah, I was under the impression that we're going to finish it today. But it doesn't look like we're going to finish it because there's just too much to cover. And I don't want to rush anything because at the end of the day, we are on the Father's timing with all of this. We're not on our time. We are on His time. So we continue to read in Revelation chapter 5 verses 7 to 9. And it says, "And he came and he took the scroll out of the right hand of him sitting on the throne. And when he took the scroll, the 4 living creatures and the 24 elders fell down before the Lamb, each holding a harp and golden bowls filled with incense, which are the prayers of the set apart ones." Wow. So praise Abba Yahuwah. The prayers of the set apart ones, where we're bringing glory and honor to His name, where we are praying, where we are exalting Him. I sat there and I thought to myself, well, you know what? Are these prayers, these prayers are filling up the bowls that is for worship. So it's really prayers of praising and worshiping and honoring and lifting Him up and exalting His name and letting Him be exalted. I don't know if it's so much all our little soulish prayers. I would say it is really, it's been put in an incense altar and it's been given up as worship. And they sang a renewed song. Wow. Now look at this. The 24 elders and the living creatures are singing a new song, and they sang a renewed song, saying, "You are worthy to take the scroll and to open its seals, because you are slain and have redeemed us to a lure by your blood, out of every tribe and tongue and people and nation." So you see, this is now when we need to be able to, and this is a teaching all of its own. So that is why I'm going to just read a few scriptures and then I'm not going to continue, because after that is going to be a teaching all of its own. Because what is he saying? You have redeemed us to a lure by your blood. So he's saying he's worthy to open the scroll. Why? Because he was slain and he brought the blood. Where did he bring the blood? He brought the blood. We see that in Leviticus chapter 23. Let's just quickly go up to Leviticus chapter 23. We're going to go to Leviticus 23 so that we can quickly just have a look at that. In Leviticus chapter 23, where he turns around and he says, let's look and see. From verse 10. "Speak to the children of Israel, and you shall say to them, when you come into the land which I give you, and shall reap its harvest, then you shall bring a sheaf of the first fruits of your harvest of the priest. And he shall wave the sheaf before Yahuwah for your acceptance. On the morrow after the Sabbath, the priest waves it. And on that day, when you wave the sheaf, you shall prepare a male lamb, a year old, a perfect one, as an ascending offering to Yahuwah." To understand, he shed his blood when he became the Passover lamb, because if we look and see on chapter 23, the same chapter 23, he turns around and he says, in the first new moon on the, verse 5, in the first new moon on the 14th day of the new moon, between the evenings, it is the Pesach. And on the 15th day of this new moon is the festival of Matzah to Yahuwah, 7 days. On the first day you do no civil work. But what was the Pesach? The Pesach was on the 14th day. Between the evenings we were to be able to slaughter the lamb. So the blood of that lamb was slaughtered. But then at the first fruits, when Yahushua resurrects, at the first fruits offering, what must he bring? He's the sheaf offering. And he is the ascending offering of a 1-year-old perfect lamb. and then it is the grain offering. So then this is when he is resurrected, and now he becomes the first fruit sheaf offering. And so if we now go to John, okay, now we're even going on a mission. This is not even in my notes, but we are just being led by the Ruach. John chapter 19. Is it John chapter 19? John chapter 20. John chapter 20 from verses 15 and 17, it says, and Yahushua said to the woman, Woman, why do you weep? Whom do you seek? Thinking he was the gardener, she said to him, Master, if you had carried him away, say to him where you put him, and I shall take him away. Yahushua said to her, Miriam. She turned and said to him, Rabboni, which means teacher. Yahushua said to her, Do not hold on to me, for I have not yet ascended to my Father, but go to my brothers and say to them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, and to my Yahuwah and your Yahuwah. So you see, what was he ascending with? He was ascending with the blood. He was ascending with the blood that now needed to be put on the altar, on the Ark of the Covenant. He needed to come and present the perfect offering. As the Lamb perfect offering died on the 14th, and then on the 17th, when he resurrected 3 days later, when he becomes the sheaf offering with the 1-year-old ram offering as well, the lamb offering, and that blood he's bringing to the Father. And so what are we seeing over here? In Revelation chapter 5, where he's turning around and he's saying, your blood out of every tribe. So you see, you were slain and have redeemed us to Yahuwah by your blood out of every tribe and tongue and people and nation. So this is now when he is wanting to raise up a people. He is now going to raise up a people for himself. And so if we have a look now, let's just read Psalm 33. Because then we will talk about this people that he's wanting to raise up. So let's go look at Psalm 33. This is such a beautiful psalm. Because in the psalm, because he's saying that they are singing. Remember, what did we read? We read that it says, and they sang a renewed song, saying, you are worthy to take the scroll and to open its seals, because you were slain and have redeemed us to Yahuwah by your blood of every tribe, every tongue, every people and nation. And so, yeah, he goes. So you must important that you see that. It doesn't just say the house of Israel. It says you're being redeemed out of every tribe. You must understand. We're going to talk about this next week. So look at from verse 3. Sing to him a new song. Play sweetly with a shout of joy. For the word of Yahuwah is straight, and all his works are in truth. Loving righteousness and right ruling. The earth is filled with loving commitment of Yahuwah. By the word of Yahuwah, the heavens were made, and all their host by the spirit of his mouth. Gathering the waters of the sea together as a heap, laying up the deep in storehouses. Let all the earth fear Yahuwah. Let all the inhabitants of the world stand in awe of him. For he spoke, and it came to be. He commanded, and it stood fast. Yahuwah brings the counsel of the nations to naught. See, all these kings of the earth that want to speak all the things that he says, kiss the Son, Psalm 2, lest he strike you. So he says he brings all the counsels of the nations to naught. He thwarts the plans of the peoples. The counsel of Yahuwah stands forever, the plans of his heart to all generations. Blessed is the nation whom Yahuwah. Now listen to what he says. Blessed is the nation whose Yahuwah is Yahuwah. The people whom he has chosen as his own inheritance. So you need to make note of that he is going to be able to bring forth a people from every tribe and tongue and the people and nation. So, who are going to be these people? You need to understand he's going to gather his people. And his people is not made up of just a Jewish people. A Jewish people are going to need to bow their knee to Messiah Yahushua. Because if they do not bow their knee to Messiah Yahushua, then how are they going to be his people? Because Yahushua is coming for a people. He has shed his blood. He has shed his blood. He has opened the scrolls. He's going to unleash the judgments upon the earth. And every tribe and every tongue is going to have an opportunity. Because he said, Yahushua spoke and said, I have come for the lost tribes of the house of Eretz Israel. He is gathering his tribes. He's gathering. He's taking out of the nations his people. Listen. So he says, where were we? Blessed is the nation whose Yahuwah is Yahuwah, the people whom he has chosen as his own inheritance. Yahuwah has looked from the heavens, and he has seen all the sons of men. He looked from his dwelling place on all the inhabitants of the earth. He who fashions the hearts of them all, he who understands all their works. You must understand, that's what the seven eyes are going throughout the nations of the world, looking for who? For those that he's going to take out, because he's looking for a royal priesthood. Because this is what we're going to focus on next week, on the royal priesthood. And he turns around and he says, he who fashions the hearts of them all, he who understands all their works. The sovereign is not saved by the multitude of an army. A mighty man is not delivered by great strength. A horse is a vain means of safety. Neither does it rescue any by its great power. So you see, what are the nations of the world going to put their trust in? They're putting their trust into a V thing. They're putting their trust into their financial status and everything else that they've got. They cannot put their trust and their faith into anything because it's a vain thing before the Father. And he turns around and he says, see, the eye of Yahuwah. Okay, those eyes. The eye of Yahuwah is on those fearing him, on those waiting for his loving commitment to deliver their being from death. So you see, he is the one who's going to deliver their being from death and to keep them alive. Listen. And to keep them alive during scarcity of food. Wow. So do you understand? Do you understand what he's saying? He's saying, you see, I am going to gather. See, remember what Joseph had to do. Joseph had to be able to go ahead, to be able to do what? To preserve life. To preserve life for who? For the remnant of Abba Yahuwah. So the same time now, Abba is going to raise up a priesthood that is going to gather from the nations to preserve life. Why? Because they fear him, because they're waiting for his loving commitment to deliver their being from death and to keep them alive during scarcity of food. So you see, he will keep us alive during scarcity of food. Our being has longed for Yahuwah. Our help and our shield is he. For our heart does rejoice in him. For we have put our trust in his set apart name Do you understand how important that is? We have put our trust in His set-apart name. So how do we put our trust in a person whose name we don't even know, who we call Him Lord and God, and Lord and God, and Lord and God, and Lord and God, and we don't even understand the character of the name? I come to know you by your name, and that name brings forth a character. Let your loving commitment, O Yahuwah, be upon us, even as we wait for you. Amen. And this is where we're going to close off today, because you see, these are the people that He says, see, the eye of Yahuwah is on those. So His eyes is searching, it's going forth, it's searching for a people. Who are these people? Who are these people? This is what He's searching for. So let us pray. Abba Yahuwah, I praise you, my Father. I praise you. I thank you, Father. I thank you for opening up your scriptures and your revelation of your scriptures to us to understand that this isn't just for a little group of people that call themselves Jews. This is for a people from tribes, from nations, that you are going to gather. Why? Because this is a people that have chosen to serve you, that have chosen to come back to your ways. And this is exactly what we are preparing ourselves for in this time of Shavuot, when the ketubah was given to us, when you gave us your ketubah, you gave us the marriage contract so that we could be betrothed. Not a consummation of the marriage, but a betrothal, so that we could be those to say, yes, I choose to follow your ordinances. I choose to follow your ways. I choose to follow you. And so, Abba Yahuwah, I truly thank you, my Father. I truly do not have enough words to say thank you for Messiah Yahushua, who is worthy to open the scroll, who is now, in this very time, now starting to unleash the things upon the earth that need to be unleashed, because it's time. It's time. It's time when Messiah Yahushua is the only one who is worthy now to open those scrolls. And when those scrolls are opened, then everything that needs to happen must happen quickly, so that you may come. Oh wow, how we look forward to that day, my Father. How we look forward. It is like a woman that is betrothed in an engagement time, and all she thinks about is the day of the consummation of that marriage. And much preparation is necessary for that day. And there will be frustrations, and there will be many tears and many things that come with it. And man, we've seen that from brides. But yet at the end of the day, how beautiful it is to just behold the beauty of the one that we're going to be betrothed to. It will all be worth it in the end. I'm sure there isn't one bride that after she has been through this whole preparation of having to get married, that when it comes to the end of that wedding day, that she's not going to say, oh, it was all worth it in the end. And then we're not going to remember the heartache and the pain. And we're not going to remember all the suffering and all the things that we've had to go through in between. Because on that day, all we will have is eyes for our King. And the things of the world will grow strangely dim as we look to the one the author and the finisher of our faith, the Lamb that was worthy to be slain, and the Lion of the tribe of Yahudah that is going to roar and come and gather us from the four corners of the earth. And so, Abba Yahuwah, I pray that we may be counted worthy to be part of that remnant. I praise and I thank you for this in Yahushua's name. Amen.